Take this knife and kill me since you've refused to talk to me. My son, please kill me since you've chosen to abandon me. I was already late for work when I saw her, standing right there in my driveway at 7 in the morning. My mother, Ruby. She was clutching 2 kitchen knives in her trembling hands, her knuckles white around the handles, her breath clouding in the cold air. Her eyes met mine through the windshield, wild and glassy, and her lips formed words I'll never be able to erase from my mind. "Kill me," she said. "Kill me, Curtis." The world seemed to stop right then. The street went silent. The steady hum of the engine faded into nothing. It had been 8 long years since I'd last seen her. 8 years since I'd heard that voice that once used to sing me to sleep. 8 years since I'd been her son, truly been her son, in any way that meant something. And now here she was, looking like a ghost of the woman who raised me, thin as paper, her cheeks hollow, her hair streaked with gray, untamed and matted. Her clothes hung off her body like they were borrowed from someone else. She looked fragile and desperate, and yet her voice had a terrible strength that made my chest tighten. I stayed frozen in my car seat, my fingers locked around the steering wheel until they hurt. Behind me, inside the house, Chantel was probably flipping pancakes or packing her lunch for the hospital. My beautiful wife, who barely knew anything about the woman standing 20 feet away. The woman who gave me life. The woman I'd left behind. "Curtis," my mother said again, her voice trembling, on the verge of breaking. "If you won't talk to me, if you won't even look at me, then just do it. Just end this. Take these knives and kill me. Because living like this, knowing my only son wants nothing to do with me, it's worse than dying." Her words cut deeper than any blade ever could. How does a mother end up begging her son for death? How does a son grow so cold that his mother becomes a stranger in his driveway? To understand that morning, you'd have to go back. To when things made sense. To when love hadn't turned to pain. My name is Curtis Williams, and this is my story. This is how I lost my mother. And this is how I'm still trying to find her. Again, my earliest memory of my mother is her voice. Not her face. Not her touch, but her voice. She sang all the time. I must have been 3 or 4, small enough that she could still balance me on her hip as she moved through our cramped apartment in Detroit. She'd hum gospel songs while stirring pots on the stove or hanging laundry by the radiator. Songs about faith, about holding on, about better days just around the corner. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it was warm. It filled every corner of that tiny home and made me believe the world wasn't such a hard place after all. We didn't have much. My father had disappeared before I was born. Just gone one day. No note, no goodbye, no explanation. Mom never said his name, never cursed him, never cried for him. She just kept going. It was her and me, always us against everything. Else our apartment was small, a worn 2-bedroom with peeling wallpaper and radiators that hissed more than they heated, but she made it feel like magic. Ruby worked 2 jobs. By day, she scrubbed offices downtown until her hands bled. By night, she waitressed at a little diner on the east side where the lights flickered and the tips barely covered bus fare. When she couldn't be home, our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, watched me. She'd feed me spaghetti and tell me stories from back when the city was alive. But when Mom was home, she was all in. She'd help me with homework, play cards, tell bedtime stories about heroes who never gave up, stories she clearly wished were about herself. "You're going to do big things, Curtis," she'd whisper, tucking the blanket around me at night. "You're going to be somebody important. Everything I couldn't have, you will," and she meant it. Every tired breath, every aching step, every dollar she tucked away was for me. But as I got older, I began to notice cracks in her strength. The way she'd stare at the unpaid bills before hiding them in a drawer. How she'd skip dinner and pretend she wasn't hungry, though her hands shook from exhaustion. And sometimes, late at night, I'd hear her crying through the thin wall between our rooms. Quiet, stifled sobs she didn't want me to hear. But I always did. And even though I didn't understand much back then, I knew she carried a weight too heavy for one person to bear. When I turned 13, I decided I'd help. I got a job bagging groceries down the street. I remember my first paycheck, $38 and some change. I came home so proud, waving it like it was a lottery ticket. But when I offered it to her, she pushed it right back. "No, baby," she said gently. "That's yours. For college, for your future. Don't you worry about now. That's my job." But I did worry. I couldn't help it. So I started using that money anyway. Buying groceries behind her back, secretly paying bills, pretending I'd found coupons or got a discount. I even forged her signature on checks once just to keep the lights on. A kid shouldn't have to do that. But I couldn't watch her break. High school came and went fast. I worked hard, got good grades, and when I earned a full scholarship to community college, Mom cried like she'd just won the lottery. She threw me a graduation party with dollar store balloons and a homemade cake that collapsed in the middle. But it was perfect. For the first time in years, I saw her truly happy. But after college started, things shifted. I wasn't home much anymore. And slowly, I began to notice something changing in her. The empty bottles under the sink, the smell of cheap wine on her breath, the way her laughter turned too loud, too forced. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone needs to unwind, right? But then the nights got darker. She started keeping bottles in her room. I found one under her bed, another in the laundry hamper. When I tried to talk to her, she snapped. "I work hard, Curtis. I deserve a drink. Don't you dare judge me." I wasn't judging. I was scared. I didn't know how to fix it, so I did what I always did. Worked harder, took on more jobs, slept less, told myself it was temporary, that once I graduated, once I made enough money, I could save her. Then came Chantel. I met her during a late-night shift at a diner, the same kind my mother used to work at. She walked in around midnight, her hospital scrubs wrinkled, her hair pulled back, her face tired but still glowing. She ordered coffee and pie. We started talking, and before I knew it, the world outside disappeared. She was calm, grounded, steady, everything my life wasn't. With Chantel, there was no chaos, no guilt, no drama, just peace. She had plans, a 5-year vision, a quiet kind of confidence that made me believe maybe I could have that too. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to save anyone. But Ruby, she didn't see it that way. From the very first moment she met Chantel, something hardened in her eyes. "She thinks she's better than us," Mom said after that dinner. "She's going to take you away from me, Curtis. You'll see. You'll forget all about me." I laughed, told her she was being ridiculous. But her words stuck. And, deep down, I think she knew she was right. Because without realizing it, I was pulling away, spending more time at Chantel's place, building a life that didn't revolve around my mother's needs or her pain. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And to Ruby, that choice felt like betrayal. So when Chantel and I got engaged, Mom didn't smile. She cried, deep, broken tears that didn't sound like sadness, but like loss. "You're too young," she said. "You don't know her like you think you do. She's not right for you." Her voice trembled, desperate. "Can't you see it, Curtis? She's taking you away from me." That was the beginning of the end, the slow unraveling of everything we once were, and the start of the 8 silent years that would lead to that morning, when my mother showed up in my driveway, holding 2 knives, begging her son to kill her. But I couldn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to. All I could see was the life I'd always dreamed of, finally within reach. A partner who didn't need me to save her. A future that wasn't built on sacrifice and struggle and pain. I was 23 years old and I wanted to be happy. Was that really so wrong? The wedding planning should have been a happy time. Instead, it became a battlefield. Ruby wanted to be involved in every decision. But Chantel wanted to keep things simple. Just family and close friends. Every choice became a fight. The venue, the guest list, the menu. Ruby felt excluded. Chantel felt suffocated. And I was caught in the middle, trying to keep everyone happy and failing miserably at it. That's when the real trouble started. That's when the accusations began. That's when everything I thought I knew about my mother, about my childhood, about the woman who raised me started to crack and crumble and fall apart. That's when the secrets started spilling out. The lies started surfacing and the truth, the horrible, devastating truth began to emerge. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. Because before I tell you about the wedding, about what happened that made him cut my mother out of my life completely, you need to understand one more thing. You need to understand that up until that point, I loved Ruby more than anyone else in the world. She was my hero, my protector, the person who sacrificed everything for me. And the idea of living without her in my life was unthinkable, impossible, unimaginable until it wasn't. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be simple, just our closest family and friends at a nice restaurant downtown. Chantel's parents had flown in from Texas. Her sister was there with her husband and their 2 kids. My mother showed up alone, wearing a dress that was too formal for the occasion. Her makeup too heavy, her smile too bright. I could tell she'd been drinking before she arrived. I could always tell. Everything was fine at first. We ordered food, made toasts, laughed at old stories. Chantel's father told embarrassing tales about her childhood. Her mother showed everyone photos from her baby album. It was warm and happy and exactly what I'd hoped for. But I kept glancing at Ruby, watching her drain glass after glass of wine, watching her smile get more fixed, more strained. I could feel something building. Some storm gathering inside her. It erupted during dessert. Chantel's mother, Karen, was talking about their family traditions. How every Christmas they'd all gather at their parents' house in Dallas. How they'd spend the whole day cooking together, opening presents, playing games. How she hoped Chantel and I would continue these traditions. Maybe start some new ones of our own. It was innocent, sweet even. But Ruby heard it differently. "Must be nice," my mother said suddenly, her voice too loud, cutting through the conversation. "Having all those perfect little traditions in your perfect little family." The table went quiet. Chantel reached for my hand under the table. "Mom," I said softly. Let's not what?" Ruby interrupted, looking at me with eyes that were both hurt and angry. "Let's not talk about how I raised you by myself. Let's not mention that I worked 2 jobs so you could have anything you needed. Let's not bring up that while Karen here was baking cookies with her kids, I was scrubbing toilets to keep a roof over our heads." "Ruby," Karen said gently. "No one is saying. You don't get to call me Ruby," my mother snapped. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through, what I've sacrificed. You just swoop in here with your perfect family and your perfect traditions and your perfect daughter, and you think you're going to take my son away from me. Well, I won't let it happen. Curtis is all I have. He's my whole world. And you?" She pointed at Chantel. "You're trying to steal him from me." I felt my face burning. Everyone was staring at us. Chantel's little niece started crying, scared by the sudden tension. "Mom, stop," I said firmly. "You're drunk. You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" Ruby laughed, but it was a bitter, ugly sound. "I'm embarrassing you, you mean? That's what this is really about, isn't it? You're ashamed of me. Ashamed of where you came from. She's made you ashamed of your own mother." "That's not true," I said. But even as the words came out, I wondered if they were a lie because part of me was ashamed. Ashamed of this scene. Ashamed of the drinking. Ashamed that I couldn't make my mother happy no matter what I did. "You need to leave," Chantel said quietly. She'd been silent until that moment, but now her voice was steady and cold. "You're causing a scene, and you're upsetting everyone. I think it's best if you go home, Ruby." My mother's face went pale, then red. "Don't you dare tell me what to do," she hissed. "You're not his wife yet. You're not part of this family. You're just some girl who's going to ruin his life. Turn him against the people who actually love him, who actually sacrificed for him." I said, "Leave." Chantel's voice didn't rise, but there was steel in it now. I should have said something. Should have defended my mother, or at least tried to calm the situation down. But I was frozen, paralyzed by shame and danger and confusion. I watched as Ruby stood up, nearly knocking over her chair. I watched as she grabbed her purse with shaking hands. I watched as she looked at me, her eyes pleading, desperate, waiting for me to stop her, to choose her, to prove that I was still her son. But I didn't. I just sat there, and after a long, horrible moment, she turned and walked out of the restaurant. I heard her sobbing as she left, and the sound cut through me like a knife. But I still didn't move. I didn't follow her. I didn't try to fix this. I just let her go. "I'm so sorry," I said to the table. To Chantel's family, to everyone who just witnessed that nightmare. "She's been under a lot of stress." "She didn't mean it's okay," Karen said kindly, but I could see the concern in her eyes, the pity. And maybe underneath that, a question. What kind of man lets his mother leave like that? What kind of son chooses his fiancée over his own flesh and blood? The rest of the dinner was subdued. People tried to move past it, tried to pretend everything was fine, but the damage was done. When we finally left, Chantel was quiet in the car. I kept apologizing, kept trying to explain, but she just stared out the window. Finally, she spoke. "Curtis, we need to talk about your mother." "I know," I said. "I'll talk to her tomorrow. I'll make her understand." "No." Chantel turned to look at me. "You need to listen to me. Really listen. Your mother has a problem. A drinking problem. And more than that, she has an unhealthy attachment to you. The things she said tonight, they weren't just about being drunk. They were about control. She's terrified of losing you, and she's willing to destroy our relationship to keep you to herself. She's just protective," I said weakly. "She raised me alone. I'm all she has." "That's exactly the problem," Chantel interrupted. "You're not supposed to be all she has, Curtis. You're her son, not her husband, not her purpose for living. What she's doing, making you responsible for her happiness, making you feel guilty for having your own life, it's not healthy. It's not normal. And if we don't set boundaries now before we're married, this is going to destroy us." I wanted to argue, wanted to defend my mother, but deep down, I knew Chantel was right. I'd known it for years, but had been too afraid to admit it. Ruby's dependence on me had been growing for a long time. The drinking had been getting worse. The neediness, the emotional manipulation, the guilt trips whenever I spent time away from her. It had all been escalating and I'd been pretending not to notice. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "I want you to set boundaries," Chantel said. "I want you to tell her that she can't speak to me like that she can't show up drunk to important events, that she needs to get help for her drinking. And I want you to make it clear that we're a team now. That when we get married, I come first, not her." The words hit me like a punch. I come first, not her. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like what any spouse would expect. But when I thought about saying those words to my mother, about putting someone else before the woman who'd given up everything for me, I felt sick. "I don't know if I can do that," I whispered. "Then we have a problem," Chantel said. "Because I can't marry someone who's going to put his mother's feelings ahead of our marriage. I can't spend my life competing with her for your attention. I won't do it, Curtis. I love you, but I won't." That night I didn't sleep. I lay next to Chantel, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was being torn in half. On one side, my mother, the woman who'd raised me, who'd sacrificed everything, who loved me more than anyone ever had or ever would. On the other side, Chantel, my future, my chance at a normal life, at happiness, at freedom from the burden I'd been carrying since I was a child. How could I choose between them? How could I live with myself either way? If you think what my mother did at that dinner was wrong, comment "Everyone deserves respect" below. I called Ruby the next day. She answered on the first ring, her voice small and apologetic. "Curtis, baby, I'm so sorry about last night. I don't know what came over me. The wine. I wasn't thinking straight. Mom, we need to talk." I said, "Really talk about your drinking, about the way you treat Chantel, about everything." There was a long pause. "What has she been telling you about me?" "This isn't about what Chantel's telling me. This is about what I saw, what I've been seeing for years now. You're drinking too much. You're unhappy, and you're taking it out on the people I love, the people you love." Her voice got sharp. "What about the person who's loved you since before you were born? What about me, Curtis? Don't I matter anymore?" "Of course you matter," I said. "But you can't keep doing this. You can't keep making me feel guilty for having my own life, for getting married, for being happy." "So I'm the problem now," she said bitterly. "She's really done a number on you, hasn't she? Turned my own son against me. Made you think your mother, the woman who gave up everything for you, is some kind of burden." "You're not a burden," I said. But even as I said it, I felt the Lee because she was. She had been for years. And acknowledging that felt like betrayal. "But you need help, Mom. You need to stop drinking. You need to find your own life, your own happiness, instead of making me responsible for it all." She was crying now. I could hear her gasping sobs through the phone. "How can you say that to me after everything I've done? After everything I've sacrificed?" And that's when it happened. That's when I said the words that would change everything. Words I'd never said before. Words I'd been too afraid to say my entire life. "Maybe you shouldn't have sacrificed so much. Maybe you should have lived your own life instead of living through me. Because this, what we have now, it's not healthy, Mom. And I can't do it anymore." The silence on the other end was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. Dead. "Fine. If that's how you feel, then I guess I know where I stand. I guess I know that 23 years of being your mother, of giving you everything I had, means nothing compared to some woman you've known for less than 2 years. I guess I know that you've made your choice." "Mom, that's not—" She hung up. I called back immediately, but she didn't answer. I called 10 more times. 20, nothing. I drove to her apartment, but she wouldn't open the door. I stood outside knocking, calling her name, telling her we needed to talk. But she just left me there. The wedding was 2 weeks away. My mother didn't come to my wedding. I called her every day leading up to it. I left voicemails begging her to be there, apologizing for what I'd said, promising we could work things out. Nothing. She'd blocked my number. She'd blocked me on social media. When I went to her apartment, her landlord told me she'd moved out, left no forwarding address. It was like she'd vanished from the face of the earth. I should have been devastated, and part of me was. But another part, a part I was ashamed to acknowledge, felt relieved. The wedding went off without any drama. No drunk mother causing scenes, no uncomfortable tension between Ruby and Chantel's family. It was beautiful and peaceful and perfect, everything I'd hoped for. And every minute of it, I felt guilty for being happy that my mother wasn't there. Chantel tried to be understanding. "She'll come around," she'd say. "Once she realizes you're serious about this marriage, once she sees we're not going away, she'll reach out. Just give her time." But I could tell that secretly. She was relieved, too. Having Ruby out of our lives made everything easier, simpler, less complicated. We could just be a normal couple. starting our life together without all the baggage of my dysfunctional relationship with my mother hanging over us. For the first few months of our marriage, I looked for her. I hired a private investigator who found nothing. I contacted all of Harold's friends, but none of them had heard from her. I filed a missing persons report, but the police said that since she'd left voluntarily and there was no sign of foul play, there wasn't much they could do. She was an adult. She had the right to disappear if she wanted to, even if it meant abandoning her only son, even if it meant cutting off all contact without explanation. Eventually, I stopped looking. Chantel was right. I had to move on. We bought a house in a nice suburb, a cute 2-bedroom with a yard and a white picket fence. Chantel got her promotion to nurse practitioner. I landed a great job at a tech company doing graphic design. We went on vacations. We made friends. We built a life, a good life, a normal life. The kind of life I'd always dreamed about, but never thought I could have. But Ruby was always there in the back of my mind. Every Mother's Day, every Christmas, every birthday, I wondered where she was, if she was okay, if she was safe, if she thought about me the way I thought about her. Late at night, I'd lie awake and replay that last phone conversation in my head, torturing myself with the words I'd said. Maybe you shouldn't have sacrificed so much. How could I have said that? How could I have been so cruel to the woman who'd given me everything? Chantel would catch me in these dark moments. You can't keep doing this to yourself, she'd say. She made her choice. She's the one who cut you off. She's the one who disappeared. You tried to reach out. You tried to fix things. At some point, you have to let go. And it tried. God knows I tried. I went to therapy. I talked through my guilt with a counselor who assured me that my mother's behavior had been manipulative and unhealthy, that setting boundaries had been the right thing to do. I started to believe it, started to accept that maybe Ruby had been toxic all along, and I'd been too blinded by love and obligation to see it. Started to think that maybe Chantel had saved me from a lifetime of emotional manipulation and codependency. Years passed. 1 year. 2. 3. We talked about having kids, but I kept putting it off. How could I be a father when I'd failed so spectacularly at being a son? What if I turned out like Ruby? Too needy, too dependent, too willing to sacrifice everything until I became a burden. Or what if I turned out like my own father, the man who'd abandoned his family before I was even born? I was terrified of repeating the cycle, so we waited 4 years, 5, 6. Life continued. Our friends had babies. We went to christenings and birthday parties and watched everyone else build families while we remained just the two of us. Chantel started hinting that she wanted children, started wondering out loud why I was so persistent. But how could I explain that? Every time I thought about having a child, I thought about my mother, about the woman I'd abandoned, about the pain I'd caused, about the guilt that never quite went away. No matter how much therapy I did or how much time passed, on the 7th anniversary of my wedding, the 7th year since I'd last spoken to my mother, something happened that would change everything. I was at work when I got a call from a hospital in Detroit. My mother had been brought in. She'd collapsed on the street. She was malnourished, dehydrated, weak. She'd listed me as her emergency contact on some old medical forms from years ago before our falling out. Would I come? I felt my heart stop. She was alive. After 7 years of silence, of wondering and worrying and trying to move on, she was alive. I told my boss I had to leave immediately and drove to the hospital, going 20 men over the speed limit the entire way. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My mind was racing. What would I say to her? Would she want to see me? Would she blame me for everything she'd been through? Did she hate me? When I got to the hospital, a nurse led me to her room. She's resting now. The nurse said she was in pretty bad shape when she came in. Looks like she's been living on these streets for a while. No permanent address, no insurance. It's a miracle someone called an ambulance when she collapsed. She paused, looking at me carefully. Are you really her son? Because I've got to tell you, she needs family right now. She needs someone to take care of her. I nodded, unable to speak. The nurse opened the door, and I walked into the room. And there she was, my mother, except she looked nothing like the woman I remembered. She'd aged 20 years and 7. Her hair was completely gray now, thin and scraggly. Her face was gaunt, her cheeks hollow. Her arms lying on top of the white hospital sheets were so thin I could see every bone. She looked like a skeleton, like death itself. "Mom," I whispered, moving toward the bed. She was asleep, her breathing shallow. I pulled a chair close and sat down, reaching for her hand. It was ice cold, fragile as paper. I started crying, deep, gut-wrenching sobs that I couldn't control. This was my mother, the woman who'd raised me, the woman who'd sung to me, who'd worked 2 jobs to keep me fed and clothed, who'd sacrificed everything for my future. And I'd abandoned her, left her to end up here starving and homeless and alone. I'm sorry. I whispered. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have tried harder. I should have found you. I should have. Her eyes opened slowly, painfully. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw confusion in her expression, like she didn't recognize me. Then recognition dawned and her face crumbled. She tried to speak but only managed to whisper. Curtis, I'm here, I said, squeezing her hand. I'm here, Mom. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. She closed her eyes again. Then a single tear rolled down her cheek. You came, she breathed. You actually came. Of course I came. I said, you're my mother. I love you. I never stopped loving you. But even as I said it, he felt the weight of the lie. Because if I'd really loved her, truly loved her, would I have let 7 years pass without finding her? Would I have let her end up here broken and alone? Love is supposed to be more than words. It's supposed to be action, sacrifice, commitment. And I'd failed at all of those things. I'd chosen my own comfort, my own happiness, my own perfect life with Chantel over the woman who'd given up everything for me. And as I sat there holding my mother's frail hand, I made a silent promise. I would make this right. I would take care of her. I would be the son she deserved. No matter what Chantel said, no matter what it cost me, I would not abandon her again. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known in that hospital room, was that this reunion was just the beginning, that the worst was yet to come. That the secrets I was about to discover would shatter everything I thought I knew about my mother, about Chantel, about myself, and about what really happened 7 years ago that made Ruby disappear from my life. Have you ever felt a betrayal this deep? Comment below with how you would even begin to cope. I stayed at the hospital all night. Chantel called around 8 p.m., asking where I was at the hospital. I told her, my mother, she's been found. She's sick. She collapsed. There was a long pause on the other end. You're with her right now? Yes. Chantel, you should see her. She's not okay. She's been living on the streets. She's starving. Curtis, come home. We need to talk about this. I can't leave her. I said, not now. Not like this. Another pause. Fine. Stay tonight. But tomorrow, we need to have a serious conversation about what that means. About what you're planning to do. The way she said it, cold, careful, controlled, sent a chill down my spine. But I pushed the feeling away. Right now, my mother needed me. Everything else could wait. The next morning, a social worker came to talk to me about Ruby's situation. She'd been homeless for over 2 years. They discovered before that she'd been living in her car, doing odd jobs for cash, barely surviving. She'd had no permanent residence since she'd left her apartment 7 years ago. She'd lost everything, and all that time, I'd been living my comfortable life, pretending she didn't exist. She's going to need long-term care, the social worker said. Nutritional rehabilitation, possibly addiction treatment. There are signs of alcohol abuse, and she'll need somewhere to go when she's discharged. Does she have any family who can take her in? I looked at my mother, still sleeping in the hospital bed, and nodded. She has me. When I got home that afternoon, Chantel was waiting for me at the kitchen table. She'd made coffee, but both cups sat untouched, going cold. I could tell from her face that this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Sit down, she said. It wasn't a request, I said suddenly, feeling like a child being called before a parent. I know what you're going to say, do you? She cut me off, her voice sharp. Because I don't think you do, Curtis. I don't think you have any idea what you're about to do to us. To our life, to our marriage. She's my mother, Chantel. She's sick. She's been living on the streets for 2 years. What am I supposed to do? Just leave her there? You left her for 7 years, Chantel said, and the words hit me like a slap. You walked away from her because she was toxic and manipulative and making both of our lives miserable. You went to therapy. You worked through this. You let go. And now the second she shows up again, you're ready to throw all of that away. She didn't just show up, I said, my voice rising. She collapsed. She was dying. Chantel, can you really not understand why I would go to her? Of course I understand, Chantel said. But what I don't understand is this. She pulled out her phone and showed me something. Text messages. My text messages to the social worker sent that morning. Messages where I'd said I would take Ruby in. Messages where I'd said she could live with us. Messages I'd sent without even discussing it with my wife first. My stomach dropped. I was going to talk to you about it when after you'd already made the decision. After you'd already promised her she could move into our home. Chantel's hands were shaking. Curtis, this is exactly what I was afraid of. This is exactly the pattern I've been watching you fall into for 7 years. She hooks you, reels you in, makes you feel guilty. And suddenly you're 12 years old again, trying to save her from herself. She needs help, I said. Real help, and I'm the only family she has. No, Chantel said firmly. You're not her family anymore. I am. This marriage is your family and you're about to destroy it for a woman who abandoned you, who cut you off without a word, who made you feel like you were responsible for her happiness your entire life. She didn't abandon me, I said. I pushed her away. I told her my voice broke. He told her she shouldn't have sacrificed so much for me. What kind of son says that to his mother? The kind of son who's finally being honest, Chantel said, but her voice had softened slightly. Curtis, listen to me. I know you feel guilty. I know you think you're the reason she ended up like this, but her choices are not your responsibility. Her drinking is not your fault. Her homelessness is not your fault. She made decisions that led her down this path. And you cannot sacrifice our entire life trying to fix her. So what am I supposed to do? Just let her go back to the streets? No, Chantel said. We help her find a facility, a good one. We pay for proper treatment. We make sure she has somewhere safe to live. Maybe a supportive housing program, something with structure and supervision. We give her resources. But Curtis, she cannot live here. She cannot become our responsibility. Because if you let her back into your life like that, if you give her that kind of access again, she will consume you. She will destroy us. I know it. And deep down, you know it too. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her she was wrong, that my mother had changed, that things would be different this time. But I couldn't because everything Chantel was saying I'd thought myself at some point. Ruby had been consuming, had been dependent in ways that weren't healthy, had made Dean feel responsible for her happiness in ways that suffocated me. I need to think, I said finally. No, Chantel said. You need to choose right here, right now. Me or her, your wife or your mother. Because I will not spend the rest of my life competing with her. I won't do it again, Curtis. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. Choose. As if it were that simple. As if you could just decide to stop loving someone. Stop feeling responsible for them. Stop carrying the weight of their suffering. But Chantel didn't understand. She'd grown up with two parents who loved her, who were stable and present and normal. She didn't know what it was like to be someone's entire world, to carry that burden from the time you were old enough to understand responsibility. I need to go back to the hospital, I said, standing up. She's going to wake up soon, and I need to be there. Curtis, I'm not making any decisions right now, I said. I just need to be there for her, that's all. Chantel's eyes filled with tears. You already made your decision, she said quietly. You just don't realize it yet. I left the house without responding, drove back to the hospital in a daze, sat next to my mother's bed and held her hand while she slept. And I thought about Chantel's words. Choose me or her. As if love worked like that. As if loyalty were a finite resource that could only be given to one person at a time. That's when Ruby woke up. She looked at me, her eyes clearer now, more focused. You stayed, she said, her voice stronger than it had been the day before. Of course I stayed. She was quiet for a moment, studying my face. Then she said something that changed everything. She made you leave me, didn't she? Chantel, she's the reason you cut me off. I felt my defenses rise immediately. That's not true. I made my own choices. Curtis, I know what happened. Ruby's grip on my hand tightened. I know what she did. I've known for years, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't break your heart like that. But now you need to know the truth. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Ruby's eyes filled with tears. The day after that rehearsal dinner, after I left, Chantel came to see me at my apartment. She told me, her voice broke. She told me that if I ever contacted you again, if I ever tried to be part of your life after the wedding, she would make sure I regretted it. She said she'd file a restraining order. She said she'd tell everyone I was a crazy alcoholic who was stalking you. She said she'd destroy my reputation so badly that Noon would believe anything I said. And then she gave me money, $5,000 in cash. She told me to take it and disappear to leave town and never come back. I felt like I couldn't breathe. That's impossible. Chantel wouldn't. I have proof, Ruby said. She gestured weakly toward the plastic bag with her belongings. In my bag, there's an envelope. I've kept it all these years. Her handwriting, the threat in black and white. She gave me the note with the money, told me those were her terms. With shaking hands, I opened the bag and found the envelope. Inside was a note written on expensive stationery. I recognized Chantel's handwriting immediately. My vision blurred as I read it. Ruby, this is the only offer you'll get. Take this money and leave. Start a new life somewhere else. If you ever try to contact Curtis again, if you ever try to interfere in our marriage, I will destroy you. I have resources. I have connections. I will make sure everyone knows you're an unstable alcoholic who's harassing us. You'll lose what little you have left. You'll lose your dignity, your reputation, everything. Or you can take the money, leave quietly, and maybe your son will remember you fondly. The choice is yours. See, The note fell from my hands. I couldn't process what I was reading. Couldn't reconcile this cold, threatening message with the woman I'd married. The woman who'd seemed so concerned about my well-being. The woman who'd said she just wanted what was best for me. She paid you to leave. My voice came out strangled. I tried to refuse, Ruby said, tears streaming down her face. But she was right. I was drinking too much. I was unstable. I didn't have money for a lawyer if she tried to file a restraining order. And the way she looked at me, Curtis, she meant every word. She would have destroyed me. So I took the money and I left. I got a motel room in Ohio. I tried to get sober, tried to build a new life. But without you, without my son, I couldn't do it. I fell apart. I drank all the money away within 6 months. And then I just gave up. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. The room was spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my wife, about the last 7 years of my life, it was all a lie. Chantel hadn't been protecting me from a toxic relationship. She'd been protecting herself, protecting her perfect life from the inconvenience of my complicated mother. She'd manipulated both of us. She'd torn my family apart, and she let me believe it was my own choice, my own decision, my own failure. Why didn't you tell me? I finally asked. Why didn't you call me? Reach out somehow. Show me this note. She blocked my number from your phone, Ruby said. I tried calling the first few months, but it never went through. And I was so ashamed, Curtis, so humiliated that I'd let her bribe me, that I'd taken money to abandon my own son. I thought you'd hate me if you knew that you'd think I'd sold you for $5,000. She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I'm so sorry. I should have fought harder. I should have found a way to tell you. But I was weak. I was broken, and I believed her when she said she'd destroy me. I felt something crack inside me, something fundamental. All these years I'd carried the guilt of abandoning my mother. All these years I'd believed I was the villain in this story, that I'd chosen my wife over my mom, chosen my own comfort over loyalty, but I'd been played, manipulated, lied to by the person who was supposed to love me most, by the person who promised to build a life with me based on honesty and trust. And my mother had been suffering alone all this time, not because she was toxic or manipulative or because she couldn't let me go, but because my wife had threatened her, paid her to disappear, destroyed her life so thoroughly that she'd ended up homeless and starving and wanting to die. I need to go, I said, standing up abruptly. The note was clenched in my fist, crumpled now, but still readable, still damning. I need to talk to Chantel. Curtis, wait. Ruby tried to reach for me. Don't do anything you'll regret. Think about this. But I was already gone. Walking out of that hospital room, getting in my car, driving home way too fast. My mind was a storm of rage and betrayal and disbelief. How could she have done this? How could the woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, have committed such a cruel, calculated betrayal? When I burst through our front door, Chantel was still sitting at the kitchen table. She looked up, startled by my entrance. Then she saw my face, saw the note in my hand, and I watched as her expression changed from surprise to recognition to something that might have been fear. Curtis, 8 years, I said, my voice shaking. Years you've let me believe I was the one who drove my mother away. 8 years you've watched me torture myself with guilt. 8 years you've known the truth and said nothing. Chantel stood up slowly. Whatever she told you, she didn't have to tell me anything. I threw the note onto the table. You wrote it yourself in your own handwriting. You threatened her. You paid her to leave. You manipulated both of us. And you let me think it was my fault. The silence that followed was deafening. Chantel looked at the note back at me, and I waited for her to deny it, to explain, to tell me there was some other version of this story that would make sense. But she didn't. She just stood there, her face pale. And I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Something cold, calculating, not sorry, just caught. What else don't I know? I asked quietly. What else have you been lying about all these years? And that's when Chantel said something that would break me completely. Something that would reveal just how deep this betrayal went. Something that would make me realize that the woman I married was a stranger, and that the last 8 years of my life had been built on a foundation of lies so comprehensive, so devastating, that I didn't know if I'd ever recover. But before I tell you what she said, before I reveal the final horrible truth, you need to understand one thing. Everything I thought I knew about love, about loyalty, about choosing between the people you care about, it was all based on false information. Every decision I'd made, every sacrifice I thought I was making for the right reasons, it was all manipulated, orchestrated, designed to isolate me from my mother so completely that I'd never questioned the life Chantel and I were building together. And the worst part, it had worked for 8 years. It had worked perfectly until now. Chantel picked up the note from the table, read it slowly, then looked at me with eyes that were completely dry. No tears, no remorse, just cold assessment. Your mother showed you this. Stop. I said, don't try to spin this. Don't try to manipulate me anymore. Just tell me the truth. Why did you do it? She set the note down carefully, folding it along its creases. Because she was going to ruin your life, Curtis. Our life. And I couldn't let that happen. Ruin my life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was my mother. She loved me. She sacrificed everything for me. She was suffocating you, Chantel interrupted, making you responsible for her happiness. Her drinking was getting worse. She was unstable and she was never going to let you go. Never going to let you have your own life. I saw what she was doing to you, how exhausted you were from trying to save her. And I made a decision. You made a decision. I felt hysteria rising in my throat. You decided to threaten my mother, to pay her to abandon me, to let me believe for 8 years that I was the one who destroyed our relationship. That's the decision you made. Yes. Her voice was steady, unapologetic. And I do it again because look at the life we've built, Curtis. Look at what we have. A beautiful home, successful careers, financial stability, peace. None of that would have been possible with Ruby in the picture. She would have dragged us down, made everything about her needs, her problems, her drama. I saved you from that. You didn't save me, I said, my voice breaking. You isolated me. You made me think I was a terrible son. You let me carry guilt that wasn't mine to carry. How is that saving me? The guilt would have faded, Chantel said. Eventually with therapy and time, and you would have been happy. We would have been happy. We were happy, Curtis. Before she showed up again. You're insane, I whispered. You're actually insane. You destroyed a woman's life. You broke up a family. And you think you were doing me a favor? I was protecting you, Chantel said. And for the first time, I heard emotion in her voice. Not regret. Anger from her, from yourself, from the toxic cycle you two were trapped in. And I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry when I'm not. I stared at the woman I'd married, and I didn't recognize her. This cold, calculating person who could rationalize such cruelty. Who are you? I asked. Because you're not the woman I thought I married. Chantel's face hardened. I'm the woman who spent 8 years building a life with you, who supported your career, who's been faithful and loyal and present every single day. I'm the woman who loves you enough to make hard decisions even when they're unpopular, even when they hurt. Love, I felt sick. You call this love? Threatening someone, bribing them, lying for 8 years. That's not love, Chantel. That's control. Call it whatever you want, she said. But ask yourself this. Before your mother showed up in that hospital, were you happy? Did you feel fulfilled? Did our life together feel empty or wrong? No, you were content. We were good together. And the only reason you're upset now is because she came back and reminded you of all the guilt and obligation and dysfunction you'd finally escaped. She came back because she collapsed on the street, I said. Because she was starving. Because you destroyed her life so completely that she ended up homeless. How can you stand there and act like you did nothing wrong? She destroyed her own life, Chantel shot back. I gave her money. I gave her a chance to start over somewhere else. What she did with that opportunity was her choice. The drinking was her choice. The homelessness was her choice. I didn't force her to throw away the money I gave her. I didn't force her to give up. She did that herself. The victim blaming was too much. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and suffocating. Get out, I said quietly. Chantel's eyes widened. What? Get out of this house right now. I can't even look at you. Curtis, you're being irrational. I said get out. I was yelling now, losing control. You ruined my mother's life. You let me think I was a terrible person for 8 years. You lied to me every single day of our marriage. And you're standing here trying to justify it. So get out now. This is my house too, Chantel said, her voice dropping to something dangerous. I'm not going anywhere. And if you try to throw away our marriage over this, you're going to regret it. Is that a threat? It's a fact. She crossed her arms. You want to know what else is a fact? Everything we have, this house, our savings, our investments, it's all joint. And if you decide to blow up our marriage over your mother, I will fight you for every penny. I will make this divorce so ugly and so expensive that you'll wish you'd never found that note. Because I'm not the villain here, Curtis. I did what I had to do. And I'm not going to be punished for protecting our future. I felt like I was looking at a stranger. This woman, this cold, calculating woman, was someone I'd never met before. Or maybe I had met her, and I'd just been too blind to see. Maybe this was who Chantel had always been. And I'd been so desperate for stability, for normally, for someone to save me from my chaotic life with Ruby, that I'd ignored every red flag, every warning sign, every moment that should have told me something was wrong. I want a divorce, I said. The words came out steady. Final. Chantel's face went pale. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. I want a divorce. I want you out of my life, and I want my mother back in it. You're choosing her." Chantel's voice was incredulous. "After everything I've said, everything I've explained, you're actually choosing that manipulative alcoholic over your wife." "She's not manipulative," I said. "You are, and I'm done." "We're done. Fine." Chantel grabbed her purse from the counter. "But don't come crying to me when she falls apart again. When she starts drinking and making you responsible for her happiness. When she drags you down into her dysfunction. Because that's what's going to happen, Curtis. And when it does, I won't be here to save you." She walked toward the door, then turned back. "One more thing. Your mother, she's not the saint you think she is. There's a reason I felt like I had to do what I did. Things about her you don't know. Things she never told you. So, before you completely villainize me and canonize her, maybe you should ask her about your father, about why he really left, about what really happened all those years ago." And then she was gone, slamming the door behind her so hard the windows rattled. I stood in the empty kitchen, my heart pounding, my mind reeling. What did she mean? What was she talking about? What hadn't my mother told me about my father? I drove back to the hospital in a daze, found Ruby sitting up in bed, looking stronger now that they'd been giving her fluids and nutrition. She smiled when she saw me, but the smile faded when she saw my face. "What happened?" I confronted Chantel. I said she admitted everything. "She's not sorry. She thinks she was protecting me." I sat down heavily in the chair. "We're getting divorced." Ruby's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Curtis, I'm so sorry." "I never wanted. It's not your fault," I said. "It's hers and mine for not seeing who she really was sooner." I looked at my mother, but she said something before she left. "Something about you, about my father." She said, "There are things you never told me. Things about why he left." What was she talking about, Mom? Ruby's face crumpled. She looked down at her hands, twisted in the white sheets. "I was hoping you'd never have to know," she said quietly. My stomach dropped. "Know what?" She took a shaky breath. "Your father didn't leave before you were born, Curtis. That was a lie. He left when you were 6 months old. And he didn't just disappear." Her voice broke. "I made him leave. I told him if he didn't go, I'd file charges against him. I'd make sure he went to jail." The room tilted. "Why? What did he do?" "Nothing," Ruby whispered. "That's the thing. He didn't do anything wrong. He was a good man, a good father. He loved you so much, but I was sick, Curtis. I had postpartum depression so severe that I was having paranoid thoughts. I became convinced that he was going to leave me, that he was going to take you away from me, that I was going to lose both of you. So, I threatened him. I told him if he didn't sign away his parental rights and leave, I'd accuse him of abuse. I'd tell everyone he was dangerous. I'd make up evidence. I'd make sure he never saw you again anyway. But this time, he'd be in prison. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was hearing. You blackmailed him. My own father. I was sick," Ruby said, tears streaming down her face. "I needed help, medication, therapy. But I didn't get it. I just pushed him away and convinced myself I was protecting you, protecting us. And by the time I realized what I'd done, by the time I got better, he was gone. Remarried, had other children, he'd moved on. And I couldn't bring myself to tell you the truth. So I let you believe he'd abandoned us. That was the villain. The pieces were falling into place. Horrible pieces. You did to him exactly what Chantel did to you," I said slowly. Ruby nodded, sobbing now. I know. And I've spent 28 years regretting it, hating myself for it. But I couldn't take it back. I couldn't fix it. And then you met Chantel, and I saw the same thing happening again. I saw her trying to push me out, trying to isolate you. And I panicked. I acted out. I made everything worse because I was terrified of losing you the way I'd made your father lose you. Oh my God, I whispered. The woman I'd been defending, the victim I'd been trying to save. She'd done the exact same thing to my father, maybe worse. She'd threatened an innocent man, driven him away from his son, let me grow up believing I'd been abandoned when the truth was so much more complicated, so much more painful. "I don't know who you are," I said. "Either of you, my wife, my mother. I don't know what's real anymore. I'm sorry." Ruby said, "I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you 1,000 times, but I was afraid you'd hate me, that you'd choose him over me, that I'd lose you. So you let me hate him instead," I said bitterly. "Let me grow up thinking my father didn't want me. Do you have any idea how that felt? How many times I wondered what was wrong with me? What made me unlovable? Why my own father couldn't be bothered to stay?" "I'm sorry," Ruby said again. But the words felt empty, meaningless. How do you apologize for stealing someone's father? For building your entire relationship with your son on a foundation of lies? I stood up. "I need to think. I need time to process all of this. Curtis, please. I'll make sure you have somewhere safe to stay when you're discharged," I said, my voice mechanical. I'll pay for treatment, for housing, for whatever you need. But I can't be around you right now. I can't look at you right now. You're leaving me again? Ruby said, her voice breaking. No, I said, I'm taking care of myself for once. Instead of trying to save everyone else, instead of letting people manipulate me and lie to me and use me, I'm going to figure out who I am without all of you. Without the guilt, without the obligation, without the lies. I walked out of that hospital room for the second time. And this time, I didn't look back because I'd just realized something devastating. I'd spent my entire life caught between two women who both claimed to love me, both claimed to be protecting me, both claimed their manipulations and lies were justified because they were acting out of love. But real love doesn't threaten. Real love doesn't manipulate. Real love doesn't drive people away and then blame them for leaving. Real love doesn't build itself on secrets and lies and control. And I'd never actually experienced real love. Not from my mother, not from my wife, maybe not from anyone. I'd just been a pawn in their games, a prize to be won, a person to be controlled. And I was done. Done being caught in the middle. Done choosing between impossible options. Done sacrificing myself for people who'd been lying to me my entire life. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 weeks later, something happened that would force me to make one final choice. Something that would make me understand what love really means. And something that would either destroy me completely or finally set me free. Stay with me because the hardest part is yet to come. 3 weeks after I learned the truth about my mother and my father, I was living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. Chantel and I had agreed to a separation. The house sat empty while lawyers argued about how to divide our life. I wasn't sleeping, barely eating, just existing in a strange limbo where nothing felt real and everything hurt. Ruby was in a treatment facility I was paying for. We hadn't spoken since that day in the hospital. I'd made sure she was taken care of, that she had good doctors and proper support, but I couldn't bring myself to visit her. Every time I thought about seeing her, I remembered the lies. My father's face. A face I didn't even know, couldn't even remember, haunted my dreams. How many times had I needed him growing up? How many times had I wondered where he was, why he didn't want me? And all along, he'd been forced away, threatened, manipulated. Just like Ruby had been manipulated by Chantel. The cycle of control and lies went back further than I'd ever imagined. I tried to find him, my father. I hired the same private investigator I'd hired to look for Ruby years ago. His name was Michael Curtis Williams. I'd been named after him. The investigator found him in Colorado, remarried like Ruby had said. 3 kids, my half-siblings, people who didn't even know I existed. He owned Asmol Construction Company. Seemed happy, stable, normal, everything my childhood with Ruby hadn't been. I drafted a letter to him a dozen times, threw it away a dozen times. What would I even say? Hi, Dad. Sorry. Mom threatened to accuse you of abuse if you didn't abandon me. But I'd love to reconnect now. How do you even begin to have that conversation? How do you explain 28 years of absence? How do you rebuild a relationship that was destroyed before you were old enough to remember it? In the end, I didn't send any of the letters. I just sat in my motel room and stared at his address and wondered what kind of man he was. If he ever thought about me. If he regretted signing those papers and walking away, or if he'd built such a complete new life that I was just a painful memory he'd rather forget. One night around 2 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting calls from Chantel's lawyer, from bill collectors asking about the house, from concerned friends who'd heard about the separation. I was tired of explaining, tired of talking, tired of existing, but something made me pick up. Curtis, the voice was Ruby's, shaking, scared. Curtis, I'm so sorry to call. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need help. Please. My first instinct was to hang up, to cut the call and cut her out and protect myself from more manipulation. But something in her voice stopped me. This wasn't the needy tone I'd grown up hearing. This was different. This was terror. What's wrong? It's my heart, she said. The doctors, they did tests. Curtis, I'm sick. Really sick. There's damage from years of malnutrition and stress. They're saying I need surgery, expensive surgery. And I don't have insurance. I don't have money. I don't have anyone else to call. I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course this was happening because the universe had apparently decided I hadn't suffered enough. How much? The treatment facility is paid through the end of the month, but after that, the surgery and recovery. They're estimating around $50,000. I know it's too much. I know I don't deserve your help after everything I've done. But Curtis, I don't want to die. I'm only 53 years old. I want a chance to make things right, to be better, to actually get healthy, and maybe be the mother you deserved all along. $50,000. I had maybe $20,000 in savings, And that was meant to cover my lawyer fees and living expenses until the divorce was finalized. I'd have to take out loans, sell things, maybe even agree to give Chantel more in the divorce settlement to free up cash faster. It would financially devastate me, set me back years. And for what? For a woman who'd lied to me my entire life, who'd driven away my father and then played the victim for 3 decades. I need to think, I said. I understand, Ruby said quietly. Take whatever time you need. I just wanted you to know in case this is the last time we talk. I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. Even when I was sick and paranoid and doing horrible things. Even when I was drinking myself to death on the streets. Even when I was lying to you about your father, I loved you. It was twisted and unhealthy and wrong, but it was love. The only kind I knew how to give. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there in the dark motel room, phone still pressed to my ear, and felt something break inside me. Because I realized in that moment that I had a choice. Not the choice between my mother and my wife. That choice had already been made when I learned the truth about both of them. This was a different choice. A harder one. A choice about who I wanted to be, what kind of person I wanted to become. I could walk away, let Ruby face the consequences of her choices. Tell myself that I'd done enough, paid enough, sacrificed enough, that her health wasn't my responsibility. That she'd burned through every bit of goodwill I had left. I could let her die knowing that her lies had finally caught up with her. That karma or justice or whatever you want to call it, had won. And part of me, a dark, hurt part of me wanted that. Wanted her to suffer the way she'd made my father suffer. The way she'd made me suffer. The way her lies had poisoned everything good in my life. But I could also choose differently. I could choose to be the person my mother never was. To break the cycle of manipulation and control and conditional love. To help her, not because she deserved it, but because it was the right thing to do. Because love, real love, isn't about keeping score. It's not about only helping people who've earned it. It's about being kind even when it's hard. About showing grace even when it costs you. About being better than the people who hurt you. I thought about my father, the man I'd never known. The man who'd been driven away by threats and lies. What would he think of me if he could see me now? Would he want me to abandon my mother the way he'd been forced to abandon me? Or would he understand that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing? I called Ruby back. She answered on the first ring like she'd been holding the phone waiting. Curtis, I'll pay for the surgery, I said. And the recovery, all of it. She started crying, deep gasping sobs of relief and disbelief. Thank you. Thank you. I don't deserve. You don't, I interrupted. You're right. You don't deserve it. But I'm not doing this because you deserve it. I'm doing it because you're my mother. Because you're sick. Because I can help. And because someone needs to break this cycle of conditional love and punishment and revenge. Someone needs to choose grace. Even when it's expensive, even when it hurts, I'll pay you back. Ruby said somehow I'll work. Well, I don't want your money, I said. But I do want something else. Anything. I want the truth. All of it. About my father. About what happened between you two. I want his contact information if you have it. And I want you to get real help. Not just for your heart, but for your mind. Therapy. Real intensive therapy. Because, Mom, you're sick. Not just physically. You've been sick for a long time. And if I'm going to help you survive, I need you to promise you'll actually work on getting better. All the way better. There was a long silence. Then quietly, I promise I'll do whatever it takes. I'll tell you everything. I'll give you everything I have about your father and I'll get help. Real help. I swear it. Okay. I said, I'll take care of the medical bills. You take care of getting healthy. After we hung up, I sat in the dark motel room and cried. Not sad tears exactly, just release. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I'd made a decision that was mine. Not manipulated by my mother. Not pushed by my wife. Not based on guilt or obligation or fear. Just a choice to be kind, to be merciful, to be better. The next morning, I got another call. This one from Chantel. I heard about your mother, she said without preamble. The facility called me. Apparently, I'm still listed as an emergency contact on your paperwork. She needs heart surgery. Yes, I said. And I'm paying for it. A long pause. Curtis, that's financial. Suicide. You know that, right? Between that and the divorce, you'll be broke. You'll lose everything we built. Maybe, I said. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. This is exactly what I was protecting you from, Chantel said. And I could hear frustration in her voice. She's manipulating you again. Can't you see that? She calls you in the middle of the night with a medical emergency and suddenly you're ready to bankrupt yourself for her. It's the same pattern, Curtis. The same dysfunction. Maybe, I said again. Or maybe I'm finally learning what it means to love someone without keeping score. without conditions, without expecting anything in return. That's not love, Chantel said. That's just being used. We're getting divorced, I reminded her. My choices aren't your concern anymore? Fine, she said coldly. Destroy yourself for her. But when it all falls apart, and it will, don't expect me to pick up the pieces. You've made your choice. You chose her over me, over our life, over everything we could have had. I hope it's worth it. She hung up and I realized something. Chantel had never understood what I was doing. To her, everything was transactional, strategic, a cost-benefit analysis. She couldn't comprehend why I'd sacrifice my financial stability for someone who'd hurt me. Why I'd choose grace over self-preservation. Why I'd break myself to help rebuild someone else. To her, it was stupidity, weakness, being manipulated. But to me, it was freedom. It was the first time in my life I was choosing based on my own values, instead of someone else's expectations. Ruby had her surgery 2 weeks later. I sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, drinking bad coffee and watching terrible daytime TV. When the doctor came out and said the procedure had been successful, that she'd pulled through, that with proper care and follow-up, she could live another 30 years. I felt something release in my chest. Something that had been tight and painful for months, maybe years, maybe my entire life. She was going to be okay, and I'd helped make that happen. Not because I owed her, not because she deserved it, but because I could. Because it was right. Because love, real love, looks like sacrifice, even when it's hard. She was groggy when I went in to see her in recovery. Tubes and wires everywhere, monitors beeping. But she was alive. Her eyes opened when I sat down and she smiled weakly. You came, she whispered. Of course, Aikame. I have something for you. She gestured to the nurse who handed me a manila envelope. Everything about your father, his address, phone number, email, everything I could remember about him before I drove him away. And a letter. I wrote it before the surgery in case I didn't make it. I wanted you to have the truth. All of it. I held the envelope like it was precious, like it was salvation. Thank you, Curtis, she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. I've spent 30 years lying to you, manipulating you, making you responsible for my happiness. I drove away your father. I let you grow up thinking you weren't wanted. I was toxic and broken, and I hurt everyone who tried to love me. But if I have 30 more years, if God gives me that gift, I'm going to spend every single one of them trying to be better, to be the mother you deserved all along. Even if you never want to see me again, even if this is the last time we talk, I'm going to get healthy, get help, build a real life. I promise you that. I squeezed her hand. I'm going to hold you to that promise, Mom. She smiled through her tears. I know you will. I spent the next few months figuring out who I was. The divorce from Chantel was finalized. She got the house. I got debt and a clean conscience. I moved into Asmal apartment on the east side. Got a better job. Started seeing a therapist who actually specialized in family trauma and manipulation. Started reading about healthy relationships and boundaries, and what love looks like when it's not toxic. Started healing. Really healing for the first time in my life. Ruby kept her promise. She stayed in the treatment facility even after her heart had recovered. Did the therapy, did the work, got sober for real this time. 3 months after her surgery, I visited her. We sat in the facility's garden, and she told me about my father, the good parts she'd never mentioned. How he used to sing to me at night. How he'd wanted to name me after him. How he'd cried when he signed the papers giving up his rights. But he'd done it because he believed Ruby's threats. Believed she'd destroy him if he didn't walk away. How he'd tried to fight for custody at first. But Ruby had been so convincing, so prepared to lie that he'd realized he couldn't win. So he left, tried to move on, built a new life because the old one had been stolen from him. I stole your father from you, Ruby said. That's the truth. I stole him because I was sick and paranoid and couldn't bear to share you with anyone. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. And I forgive you. She looked at me shocked. You do? I do, I said. Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. It was horrible. But I forgive you because holding on to anger and bitterness would only hurt me. And I've been hurt enough. So I'm choosing to let it go, to move forward, to build something new instead of staying stuck in the past. We cried together in that garden. Two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole, how to love each other in a way that was healthy, how to break cycles that went back generations. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was real, and that was enough. 6 months after Ruby's surgery, I finally got up the courage to contact my father. I sent him a letter, simple, honest. Hi. You don't know me, but I'm your son, Curtis. I'm 28 years old and I just found out the truth about why you left. I don't know if you want to hear from me. I don't know if you've moved on so completely that I'm just a painful memory you'd rather forget. But if you're willing, if there's any part of you that still wonders about me, still cares, I'd like to meet you. I'd like to know my father. I'd like to understand where I come from. No pressure, no expectations. Just if you're open to it, I'd like to try. He called 2 days later. His voice shook when he said my name, Curtis. God, Curtis. I've thought about you every single day for 28 years. I've wondered what you looked like, what kind of man you were becoming, if you hated me for leaving. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't fight harder, that I let her drive me away, that I wasn't there. It's okay, I said, and I meant it. You were manipulated, threatened. You did what you thought was right. I understand now, and I forgive you for all of it. We talked for 3 hours that first call. Then we set up a meeting. He flew out to Detroit and we met at a coffee shop downtown. I saw him walk in and I knew him immediately. I had his eyes, his build, his walk. I looked like someone, belonged to someone, had roots I'd never known existed. We sat across from each other and he cried. Just sat there and cried and told me he'd never stopped loving me, never stopped being my father. Even when he couldn't be in my life, we started slow. Phone calls, video chats, getting to know each other. He told me about his life, his other kids, my siblings, his wife, who was kind and understanding, and welcomed me with open arms. Slowly, carefully, we built something. Not trying to replace the years we'd lost, just trying to create something new, something real. And it was beautiful, complicated but beautiful. I introduced him to Ruby eventually. That was hard. She cried and apologized. He was gracious but distant. They'd never be friends. Too much history, too much pain. But they were civil for me because they both loved me enough to try, and that was enough. Today, 2 years after that morning when Ruby stood in my driveway holding knives, I'm in a good place. Not perfect. Still healing, still learning, still making mistakes, but good. I have a relationship with both my mother and my father. I've learned how to set healthy boundaries, how to love without sacrificing myself, how to recognize manipulation and walk away from it, how to choose grace without being a doormat. I'm building a life that's mine, not built on lies or guilt or obligation, just mine. And it feels good, really good. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Ruby is still sober, still in therapy, still working on being better. We have dinner once a month, talk on the phone every week. It's not perfect. Sometimes old patterns try to resurface, but we both catch them now, call them out, work through them. We're learning how to be mother and son in a healthy way, how to love each other without it being toxic. It's slow, it's hard, but it's real. And that morning when she stood in my driveway with those knives begging me to kill her, I finally understand what she was really asking for. She wasn't asking me to end her life. She was asking me to see her, to acknowledge her suffering, to care enough to either help her or pull her out of her misery. She was at rock bottom, and she was begging for someone, anyone, to pull her up or to let her go peacefully. She'd given up, lost hope, believed she was beyond saving. But she wasn't. None of us are. No matter how broken we get, no matter how many mistakes we make, no matter how toxic our patterns or how deep our wounds, there's always a chance for redemption, for healing, for change. We just have to be willing to do the work, to face the truth, to choose differently. I'm glad I didn't drive away that morning. Glad I didn't call the police or ignore her or choose the easy path of walking away again. I'm glad I eventually opened that car door, took those knives from her hands and said the words she needed to hear. I see you. I'm here and we're going to get through this. Because that's what love really is. Not control, not manipulation, not threats or bribes or lies. Love is showing up even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when the person doesn't deserve it. Love is choosing grace, choosing mercy, choosing to help someone be better, even when they've spent years making you worse. Love is breaking cycles, building bridges, creating something new from the ashes of something broken. And sometimes, just sometimes, love looks like a son standing in his driveway at 7 in the morning, taking knives from his mother's shaking hands and saying, "Not today. Today we choose to live." So that's my story. That's how I went from being a son who abandoned his mother to a son who saved her. From being manipulated by the 2 women I loved most to learning how to love them both in healthier ways. From being trapped in cycles of guilt and obligation to finally being free. I'm not going to lie to you and say everything is perfect now. Life doesn't work that way. Ruby still struggles sometimes. She's human. She makes mistakes. Old habits try to resurface. But the difference now is that we both recognize them. We both do the work. We both choose better. And that's all any of us can do, right? Just keep choosing better. Keep trying. Keep growing. My father and I are building our relationship. It's awkward sometimes. We've missed so much. There are gaps we can never fill, but we're trying, and that counts for something. His other kids, my half-siblings, are incredible people. I have a family I never knew existed. Roots I never knew I had. It's strange and beautiful and complicated and everything family is supposed to be. As for Chantel, I haven't spoken to her since the divorce was finalized. I heard through mutual friends that she remarried quickly. Someone wealthy, stable, uncomplicated, someone without a messy family history or emotional baggage. I hope she's happy, I really do. Because I've learned that holding on to bitterness only poisons you. It doesn't hurt the person you're bitter toward. It just destroys you from the inside. So I let her go. Let all the anger and betrayal and hurt go. Forgive her even though she never asked for forgiveness. Because I needed to be free more than it needed to be right. The biggest lesson I've learned through all of this is that people are complicated. They're not heroes or villains. They're just people. Broken people trying to survive in a broken world. Ruby wasn't a perfect victim. She'd done horrible things herself. Driven away my father. Manipulated me my entire childhood. Let me take on responsibilities no child should carry. But she also loved me. Sacrificed form. Did her best even when her best wasn't good enough. Both things can be true at the same time. Chantel wasn't a monster either. She genuinely believed she was protecting me. Genuinely thought Ruby was toxic and that removing her from my life was the right call. She was wrong. She went about it in a cruel, manipulative way. But her intentions, at least at first, came from a place of caring about me. Of wanting our life to be peaceful. Of not wanting to compete with someone else for my attention and love. I can understand that even if I can't condone how she acted on it. And me, I'm not a hero. I'm not even sure I'm a good person. I'm just someone who's trying to figure out how to love people without destroying myself in the process. How to set boundaries without being cruel. How to forgive without being a doormat. How to break cycles without breaking the people caught in them. I'm learning every day. I'm learning. Dear listener, if you've stuck with me through this whole story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for not judging me too harshly, for understanding that life is complicated and messy, and sometimes there are no good choices, just hard ones. I hope that if you're in a situation like mine, if you're trapped between people you love, if you're being manipulated or lied to or made to feel responsible for someone else's happiness, you'll find the courage to set boundaries, to seek truth, to choose yourself sometimes, even when it feels selfish. But I also hope you'll find room for grace, for forgiveness, for understanding that hurt people. And sometimes the person who's hurting you is hurting worse. That doesn't excuse their behavior, but maybe, just maybe, it can help you understand it. Help you find compassion even in the midst of your pain. Now, I want to ask you something. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? If you'd been standing in that driveway, staring at your mother holding knives, begging you to kill her after 8 years of abandonment, would you have driven away, called the police, gotten out of the car, and confronted her? I'm genuinely curious. Let me know in the comments. And if you think my story was shocking, wait until you hear the next one. Because this story, this journey through manipulation and lies and redemption, it's not unique. There are thousands of people out there trapped in similar situations, caught between loyalty and self-preservation, between love and toxicity, between family and freedom. And their stories need to be heard too. So, hit that subscribe button if you believe in honesty and compassion. If you believe that people can change, if you believe that grace and forgiveness matter even when they're hard. Only people who support lies and manipulation would refuse to join us. And I don't think that's you. Before I go, I want to say one more thing. To anyone out there who's struggling with family dysfunction, with manipulation, with guilt about setting boundaries, you're not alone. You're not crazy. Your feelings are valid, and you deserve to be happy. You deserve to build a life that's yours. Not one that's dictated by someone else's needs or expectations or dysfunction. But you also deserve to know that it's possible to do that with compassion, with grace, with love. You don't have to choose between cutting people off completely and letting them destroy you. There's a middle path. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It requires constant vigilance and work. But it's there and it's worth it. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And thank you for believing that even in the darkest moments when life feels impossible and people feel irredeemable, there's still hope. There's still a chance for things to get better. There's still love worth fighting for. My name is Curtis Williams. This was my story and I'm still telling it. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of grace at a time. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Set your boundaries. Seek your truth. But leave room for grace. Leave room for love. Leave room for redemption. Because we're all broken. We're all struggling. We're all just trying to survive, and maybe if we're lucky to heal. Take care, and until next time, always remember at Virtuous Stories, we love you.